Now, you kind of wondering why Aztec Batman was only allowed to see in theaters in Mexico, because when this dropped, the trailer, all the buzz about Aztec Batman, that is basically the number one question that a lot of people were kind of curious about. Because let's face it, Batman is sort of made for Americans. That means it should also show in theaters in USA. In other words, in a way, not really. You have to really understand the business side of it. Why they decide to put in Mexico, stay in the United States. If you want to see the movie, you have to basically buy on digital or wait for HBO Max to drop it on their streaming service. It's a very simple answer. I mean, they have multiple answers, but you want to go straight to the answer. It's basically Mexican people actually respects animation, is that they understand there are different types of genres of animation. In fact, the animation like Looney Tunes, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, or any type of animation would probably be sort of plastered in the walls of the gym or the restaurant. You would see a meme of Tweety Bird on basically on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever platform. You're 100% sure that tweet, if that Tweety Bird is 99% sure is from a Mexican person, because it's so ingrained in Mexican culture. You cannot get away with it because you always sit in front of your face in school, in the bus stop, everywhere. In other words, that's how much they love animation. But on top of all this is the fact Mexican people are consistent go into theaters to watch animation. In fact, go to Box Office Mojo, put up Memory of Snails or Flow or The Day Blew Up, and every single one of them, the highest one who rate all the money in their own country usually is Mexico. Sometimes not, but like 99% sure they're completely consistent. They go to theaters to watch animation, and they don't care what type it is. In fact, this is the reason why Memory is Now Flow got good chunk of their money back because of Mexico. In fact, the director of both films thank Mexico. They had special screenings for their own movies on their own big screen in Mexico. That's how much proud and love they get to animation. This is the reason why you hear once in a while, if you hear a Latino say, if your project is a failure, go to Mexico, because there we get your money back. It is true. For example, Memory is Snail, 100% sure none of you who watching this video realize what this film is. He actually came here in the United States, and basically nobody really watched it or aware its existence. In fact, this is the reason why they went to Mexico, because everybody watched that film. I think it makes about $4 million or $5 million, just because people really enjoy that film. You find an audience. It's like a phrase. You will find your audience in Mexico. Just go to Mexico, because that's how open they are of love of animation. But they also all other factors. If you've seen the trailer, you know the company they hired to make this trailer. It's starting to make more sense. Before I do, my name is Rachel. I like to talk about animation, not just animation, do reviews, first impressions, cartoon theories, and sometimes, if I have some spare time, cartoon breaking news. Of course, you like how it's going, you like to help my channel, pull like, comment, and subscribe. That's the only thing you need to do. If not, that's fine if you do. Thank you. Because of you, I'm getting close to my main goal of 2,000 subscribers. And yes, I'm getting close every single day because of people like you. People who like, comment, and share. Thank you. Now, let's continue of the explanation why the Aztec Batman only go to theater in Mexico but not United States. Now, let's get started. Now, another reason why they decide to put, besides how popular Mexico is, love with animation, is the fact the studio they chose to adapt this to animation is this studio called Animation Studio. I know, not the original, but you may heard this film if you watch a very specific show on Netflix called Lynching Quest. Lynching Quest, the how to explain what it is basically a Mexico version of Scooby Doo. The only difference is it's basically a kid who sees basically dead people, supernatural, and legends and creatures. He's the only one who sees them and can stop the sort of horrific things what actually happening. This one I mean is sort of comparing to Scooby Doo. It is Mexican version Scooby Doo. But the one thing it stands out that Pacific project is the fact it's a time period show. They very vaguely put it in 1800s, but you don't know what exactly time period. Is it early, late, in between, even in 1900s? You keep yourself guessing because they like to play of the clothes, uniform, and things they wear, just to make you trying to figure out what exact time period. And they are actually very good doing that. This is the reason why WB chose animation studios, because they are understanding the period where they're trying to portray, in other words. This is the reason why they chose them to do Aztec Batman. You can see it in the trailer. You can see what time period, what area, what they're actually doing when they're wearing. But also they also are people aware they like to play with kind of different shifted time period. They don't want to be super accurate. That's something is expected. Now, I also forgot something very important. This studio does the job so well is because they know what they're doing compared to Hollywood. Every single time Hollywood make a Mexican movie, but they always screw it up, like Apocalypto, that sort of very racist film that one things was actually going on. In fact, look up all the reviews, and every single one, or one of at least you can find one explicitly tell you this is so inaccurate. I mean, not one or two things, everything. It's almost like a racist white person what he thinks Aztec culture really is. Or how about the last horror film they made in Blumhouse? I think Blumhouse made it called The Whippy Moving, or aka La Llorona. That film was a little disgusting a little bit. They're semi-accurate, but they made one big mistake. They let a white person be the lead in a Mexican culture type of film that a lot of Latinos did not go to watch it because it just feels completely wrong. It's something that this is the reason why that film wasn't a major hit. If it was, they made multiple sequels. But this is the reason why nobody supported in the Latino community. To compare to animated studios, they do their homework, not because they're Mexicans. They know their time period. They go back because Lynching Quest is a successful franchise. They constantly do homework about that specific time period. It just makes sense why they chose that. Especially Animated Studio is also a very recognizable studio in Mexico. So you have the right people, right studio. Even that, nobody's sure this movie will be successful, but people will give it a chance because you have it in the right hands to make it. Once again, we don't know it'll be a good movie, but at least you have the trust it will be not insulting or racist. In fact, a lot of Latinos or Pacific Mexican people love this. I feel like 70% of people who react to trailer, the original Spanish version and the English version, are excited. Except that 30%, 50% are just sort of Karens complaining, and the other 15% are kind of scared because they are basically touching a very kind of sensitive subject matter that the Mexicans and Spaniards don't want to talk about it because it's just a headache. We keep going back, dragging an argument of that again and again. Almost every single year, somehow a politician or historian says something about that time period, it becomes a little bit of a show in other words. This is the reason why good 15% are kind of scared. So besides those percentages, the rest, they're excited. They accept this will be inaccurate, but yet it feels perfect. Of course, there are some complaints like they want to know why they do not use La Santo or Zorro or use Aztec in themselves, they use this as Batman. It's very simple. It's because Warner Brothers want more Mexican people to watch more Batman. They want to convince them pick up the comic, watch the movies, watch everything else. Because of this was the strategy, because they realized Mexican people really love animation, including putting on Aztec versus Spaniard by using Batman, the Joker, and all the villains sort of metaphor. It makes sense. You easily convince them to go to pick up a comic book. It's a very smart strategy. Make the fandom even bigger of DC. But the only problem is people were uncertain because they chose animation studios, because animation studios are not the best studio. That you could say they are the second well known for a purpose, because the animation are kind of clunky. In fact, I've heard a good commentate. They look like Archer designs. It's because that's how they draw their cartoons and Legend Quest. If you go Legend Quest or just Google Legend Quest, you can tell they don't have the budget, or they don't really focus on animation that far. Action wise, they pretty basic, but I'm sort of surprised they did not choose Tres Cabezas Studios, because they're the company is known to having good action, good animation. In fact, just basically go on YouTube, could put Mexican Rey Mysterio versus the Darkness, or Rey Mysterio cartoon, and you see they work. They made that specific cartoon. You can see the fluency and the action. Of course, I can see why they probably didn't choose them, because their animation feels more anime than anything else. You also have the other studios like the Werewolf cartoon. They specifically, you've seen their projects on basically Walmart. They're basically the chicken franchise. They have a bunch of chickens trying to survive in farms. Basically, how to describe that IP is basically a Mexican version of Family Guy, but it evolves to kind of Shrek, because it used to be very edgy. Now they sort of friendly, but web cartoons are more better known, has more better animation. That's the reason why they're basically the most respected studio, because they have more better animation control. Not very good action control, but they have a really good fluency. And this is the reason why I guess they chose basically animation studio. It feels they probably get it more, especially how they just study more about time periods of their own projects. But other than that, a lot of people just sort of maybe concerned, but you can see why they did this. Like, they are very respectful studio that makes sense. If you put their name, their logo on this Batman project, they go at least to check it out the first weekend. They probably earn all the money back just the first weekend. If the movie is bad, doesn't matter. They still made their money. But it also makes sense if they do, because if they was successful, the probably make a trilogy. Because if you could compare this to Batman Ninja, they did the same thing to Japanese. They made that specifically to convince them to buy more Batman material or go into more DC, and they were successful because they made a sequel. I will not be surprised they made a third one, and Aztec Batman will be also a trilogy, because could be the same results. In fact, I'm sure a near future there will be more Latino-led projects in Mexico or even Hollywood doubling down in animation, only because of Mexico. This is the reason why they chose maybe Latino main leads or main characters, because Latinos really love animation. So don't be surprised this actually blows up even more. But once more, it all depends about this Aztec Batman. This will be any good. Just cross the fingers to be successful. It could be because they love animation, but because it's sort of Aztecs versus Spaniards, it's also a very delicate subject. This is easy to backfire, because let's face it, animation studios are very well known of doing perfect timelines, a perfect sort of represent of the time periods, but they're not well known doing very written good movies. Their movies are basically hit and miss. Good 60 or 70% of their films are good, but good 30% is just sort of kind of okay or just annoying. That's one of the major problems of animation studios. Like, they aren't inconsistent to being good every single time. So who knows what's gonna happen? But a lot of Latinos are excited. Hopefully they get money. Some people prefer, why not bring La Santo, the basically Superman version, the Mexican Superman version now. It's like very famous that they want to see Batman versus El Santo sort of animated movie. That's something they always wanted. In fact, there is a basically a photo of Anna West and El Santo shaking hands, and they want to make it sort of a movie about that now. Where so there's like I think it's just sort of a edited fan made photo. I'm not sure it's real. I think it's just edited, but they always wanted that. But the only problem is Santo is so popular, there's small chance they will not make a movie about it with Batman because it's just too expensive. Some people, why not just make a Zorro movie? Other people just choose, why not choose Aztec just by itself because how complicated they are. But at the same time, they are that complicated. They're not easy to make Aztec animated movies or shows because no one want to touch it because it's just too layered. All of that, that's all the things I heard, all the reason why they made basically Batman Aztec. Like, the opportunity, they have the branding, have the right people, the people will go because they still respect animation, they still respect the theater sort of what's the best word, life now, where it's like there are cinema snubs in Mexico. That's part of the culture. They would go to watch almost anything, but it had to be good. But at the end, that's basically, that's all I can say. In other words, I don't know, hopefully I helped answer a few things. Hopefully I did explain well. I got nothing else to say. Just thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a wonderful day. Bye.